Day by day, little by little, we write the story of our lives. Join author Joe Alch on a walk down memory lane with tenacious humans who didn't let their circumstances dictate their life and what they could become. Welcome to the Lemon Tree Memoirs of Courage podcast.
Good morning. I want to welcome a wonderful guest today all the way from Alabama via Skype, Beth Duke. Welcome to the show. Beth is the author of It All Comes Back to You, Delaney's People, and Don't Shoot Your Mule. So welcome, Beth. I'm so excited to have you as a guest. And we're talking about your latest book, It All Comes Back to You. And just want to talk about it. One line in the book that I loved so much was, the past is critical to understand who you are. And this podcast is all about their strength in the struggle, and that we learn from our struggles and can become better human beings. So let's talk about It All Comes Back to You. Where did you get your inspiration to write this book?
Initially, my inspiration was probably my grandmother. She and I were very, very close. And although she's not the character Violet in this book, she inspired that character through her elegance and her confidence and her general head to toe, perfect, beautiful dressing and walk like you have a crown on your head attitude. And I started off, honestly, to write a book about elderly people in a nursing home, because I feel like there are so many wonderful stories there, and we tend to disregard them or walk by them and not hear them. We tend to parade our veterans from World War II around, and those people get a lot of attention. But there are people in nursing homes who have the most amazing histories, whether they're love affairs or things that they've done, places they've been. So it was initially going to be a story about a bunch of people who came together later in life in their golden years in an assisted living facility and nursing home. And then I sort of fell in love with Violet as a character, and the book became more about her. But the underlying theme, and I'm sure you're aware, is that we're all interconnected and our actions have so much impact on other people's lives. And that was what I was really trying to drive home with the book.
Mm-hmm. It was wonderful, and I loved your characters. So tell me about just your history as a writer. So did you go to college for writing? Tell me about your journey as an author.
I went to school for public relations, really, for mass communications. And although I've always loved putting things into words, I had a business at one time called Ghost Writers in the Sky. That's WRITERS. I was the go-to person for skits and song parodies in junior league. That was just kind of my thing, putting things into words. But I never actually started writing fiction until basically the mid-2000s. Part of that was that this grandmother I mentioned to you was living in Alabama, and I was living in Florida, where I spent the majority of my life. And as Catherine Stockett, the author of The Help, said, I began to write in a voice that I missed. And that was my grandmother, but it was also just the voice of Alabama, which is my home state. Another catalyst for my writing career that seemed to make me want to write fiction was I went to see Sweet Home Alabama with my best friend, and she absolutely loved the movie, and I wanted to walk out halfway through because of the stereotypes I saw there. You know, I've never heard the words, you have a baby in a bar.
I know.
You know, there are so many things that were so stereotypical to me in that movie, and I wanted to portray a different side of my home state that many people are not aware of. I wanted to communicate about the Marshall Space Center and beautiful, warm, educated people and scenery that is abundant, whether it's mountains or the shore. And the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, which is not to be or not to be, I'm fixing to decide, but an actual Shakespeare festival. So those were the kinds of things I wanted to show people and use my writing as a vehicle to portray. And from the first book I've written, they've all kind of been love letters to Alabama. in one way or another.
That's awesome. Well, I'm from Louisiana. I live in Texas, but same here. There's so much beauty in the South, and we are portrayed a lot of times as country bumpkins that, don't have a brain. And I loved your characters so much in this book. I'm a nurse, and I have a heart for seniors in nursing homes, and that is just one of my passions, that they do have a story. I was a hospice nurse for many years, and I remember one couple, they were married 79 years, and I was with them when the wife kissed her husband goodbye when the funeral home came to take him away when he passed away. And there are so many stories you can share just as nurses. And so this book particularly caught my interest because of the relationship with the nurse with Violet. And I love that. So tell me about Ronnie. How did you come up with the character of Ronnie?
There is a lot of me in Ronnie. I've never been a nurse, but I have general characteristics in a lot of ways. The pale Irish mole person who can't get a tan, that's me on the page. There's a lot of me in Ronnie. But I have a cousin who's worked in nursing homes for many years. And when I decided to write this book, the first thing I did was invite Mandy to my home for nachos and margaritas and asked her to tell me some stories. The first story she told me was the Vine story, which is a true story from Florida. It did take place in a nursing home that kind of opens the book. And after that, I was able to go and shadow her in a nursing home and watch her and her fellow workers and how they it's hard for me to describe how touching it is to see their love and compassion in action. And I really wanted to pay tribute to that.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to pay tribute to the slightly darker sense of humor you have to have sometimes to cope in those situations.
Mm-hmm. You do. And there's some things that are just so unbelievable. It's like a day in the life, So you are a self-published author. Is that correct?
It is correct. I would point out this book garnered an agent very early on who fell in love with the manuscript, and she had the manuscript for a year. I did end up with an offer from a publisher, but it was a very typical offer for a few $1,000s and a smaller percentage of book sales than I felt I wanted to go forward with. And I turned out to turn that down and decided through KDP, which is Amazon's publishing arm. And it has been a phenomenon, and I'm very, very grateful for that. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And I'm a very passionate advocate for independent publishing. It's definitely a trend in our industry. I know a lot of traditional authors who have gone to independent publishing, and that's another subject we can talk about for quite a while, but it can be a wonderful road.
I have found some wonderful books on Amazon, and I'm a big advocate. I've self-published through Amazon as well, and I'm okay. Let me ask you a question. This is what authors ask me. What do you do? I mean, you have gotten awesome feedback, and people love the book. What do you do about those negative feedbacks? Do you read those? I'm just curious, or do you just say it's just part of what we do? Do you take? And I know there haven't been very many, so most of yours are 5 stars. But what do you do about those people that don't care for your writing?
In early days, it was very hurtful, and I stopped reading them in early days. I am a member of a number of groups, author groups, and we all share feelings and thoughts when we talk about, particularly about reviews like that. And that you just can't pay attention. Someone may or may not love your book. Someone may have read a chapter and quit. Some things just aren't going to appeal to some people. And I take heart in the fact that a lot of the biggest hits out there also have 1-star reviews. And I'm a member of a lot of groups of readers who tend to have 90% of the readers will absolutely love a book, but 10% absolutely hate it. So reading is very subjective. Novels are very subjective, and I don't take it to heart anymore. I realize not everyone is going to love my book.
I know, but it's awesome. So the reason I asked this is I got a really bad review on my book, and I was like, do I want to read that or not? And I didn't. I just let it go. And but anyway, it's a great book. Okay, so other questions. How did you do? I know you did this alternating chapter structure of your book, and I've had people ask me about that. Is that hard to do, to go from one time period to another? And you just made it work so effortlessly. And can you just talk about that, share that with the listeners?
Thank you. And I will tell you that's my favorite way to write. That is my preferred way to write. Every book I've written contains different perspectives, different points of view throughout the book. And honestly, this was kind of a narrowing down for me to just two characters shifting back and forth in time. My upcoming novel, Tapestry, is the same way. It alternates chapters between a young lady in Alabama and some people in Texas who happen to be in the Dallas area.
Oh,
So I love
wow.
alternating chapters. One of the most fascinating things to me is viewing the same events through a different lens and having different perspectives on things that took place. And that's probably a part of why I love to write that way. And to me, it keeps it from becoming tedious. I like reading about a certain character for a certain number of pages, but then being able to move on to something a little different and then bounce back. It just, to me, it holds my interest in a book. And I think that definitely comes through in the way I write.
Well, it's awesome. Okay, so tell me about book clubs. So you're involved in all. You've been a guest with. You've got a big book club audience. And I love your questions that you have for book club readers. You can find those on your website. Tell me about your experience with the book clubs. Have you enjoyed talking with them and working with them? And just give me a little feedback on that.
It has been an absolute joy for me. I spent, as I mentioned, most of my life in Florida on the Gulf Coast. And one of the things I miss the most about that place is my book group, because you tend to find such wonderful camaraderie and friendship among these women who get together and share that time and a glass of wine or two and talk about a book. And I have missed mine so much. So this has been a wonderful experience for me because I get to join groups all over the country, literally from Maine to Alaska. I meet with probably 3 or 4 groups a week, mostly via Skype, sometimes throughout the Southeast in person. But it's just been phenomenal. And I am so grateful for that experience because I have met wonderful new friends and gotten to talk to so many amazing women. And that's been the best part of this entire journey for me.
And, just what a way to share your story. And people want, I know for me, I got your book I ordered on Amazon. I stayed up till 4 a.m. and I am not a night owl. I could not put it down. Maybe it was because I related as a nurse and I loved the character Violet. She kind of reminded me of one of my grandmothers who was real spunky and so sweet and stylish. And, anyway, so it's just wonderful. So I know you talked about your new, you've got a new project underway. So where did you get your inspiration for this new book?
I am fascinated by a number of events that took place in Alabama that people are not aware of. And I did a lot of research into them and incorporated them into this book. Everything I write takes place in Alabama. I think Fannie Flagg said one time, even if she writes a book and it takes place in Ohio, it really takes place in Alabama. And I discovered some things along the way I wanted to weave into this. But I can't tell you exactly where the inspiration and ideas for books come from for me, because they just kind of come to me. And I had an idea about writing a story that would involve a young lady growing up here and her grandmother again. I will never write a book without a magical old lady in it. I have figured that out. Her grandmother is a beautiful, wonderful older lady who has a strong belief and suspicion that she is descended from Muskogee Creek. And for that reason, she insists on being called Sparrow instead of her given name, which is Verna. And she tends to dress in faux deer skin and try bizarre recipes that date back to the 1800s. And she's just a very colorful, lovable, wonderful character. And her relationship with Sky is most of this book. I don't want to give away too much, but
No.
they both they have an interesting journey together. I'll put it that way. And that was really kind of what came to me in the beginning. I also brought back a character from a book I wrote years ago called Don't Shoot Your Mule. Her name is Kara Evans, and Kara is a character that people absolutely love to hate. She's gorgeous and stunning, and people turn and stare when she walks into the room. And she is an absolute rattlesnake inside. She's a sociopath, and people really wanted to see Kara come back, so I wove her into this story as well.
Wow, that's all. Well, this sounds so exciting, and I'm so happy for your success. So, how can a reader get in touch with you or get more information about your books, your upcoming book? Just give the listener just some information on how we can contact you.
Sure. The easiest way to stay in touch with what I do is generally through my website, bethduke.com. It's very easy. You're also more than welcome to join me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm much more active on Facebook and Instagram than any other social media. I haven't even posted anything on the website yet about the upcoming book because we don't have a solid date for introduction yet, but I'm hoping for March of 2020. But you'll find a lot of interesting stuff on the website, including a gallery of the most beautiful readers in the world, who are pictures of their groups I've met with around the country, and they send me pictures from their book group meetings, and we have a lovely gallery of them.
That is awesome, and we're going to do that tomorrow night too. So we're going to have our big crowd take a picture with the book, with our books, and send it to you. So this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for your information and your time today. And just look forward to reading your next book. I strongly encourage readers. It all comes back to you. It's awesome. Available on Amazon. So thank you so much, Beth, and you have a great day.
Thank you. It was a joy to be with you, Jo. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Lemon Tree Memoirs of Courage podcast, hosted by author Jo Alch. You can find more information on Jo's beginnings and the Lemon Tree at thelemontreebook.com.